Hello everyone, welcome to another video of Keen. In this video, we will discuss further into customization of Keen's admin theme. We will start by looking at the build tools that comes along with Keen and run through the config file and explain to you step by step what each field within the Keen build tool means. After that, we will discuss about how we can customize our Sass, changing fonts or changing colors, and also discuss on how Keen's tier process in terms of layout, demos, and components or elements, how they tier up against each other. And then we will move on to look at our JS, how our JS is structured and how you can customize that as well. And also, we will demonstrate how you could include or add your own custom files. Custom files being your own custom Sass, JS, or something else entirely. Okay, so without further ado, let's have a look at Keen. Please note that when you use Keen, we recommend that you use Keen in a way where Keen is more like a companion rather than a package file where you modify directly and then just copy and paste code from Keen into your project. Whilst there will be instances where you need to copy and paste, but in order to use Keen efficiently is to work around the build tools that's provided and also have a separate project folder and have Keen close by it. We have here our Keen app, and if you look at this, we have a default folder here. And what this default folder is actually Keen's entire default theme, not the default demo, the default theme compared to the classic theme. So we have our tools, our source, and our dist for our demos, and it is placed right next to or basically within our Keen app. But when you deploy a project, you just don't include this folder within your final package. So let's first have a look at our build tools. Now, if you can see here, this is our editor, and if you open our tools and config, you'll find our default.json. And in here, we will go through most of the fields. The two primary parameters or fields within the config file is our main config and our build. The main config is where we keep all the configuration on how we plan to compile and deploy the assets after compiling. So, as mentioned before in our previous videos, our demo field is to specify which demo you wish to compile and deploy into your assets folder. So at the moment it's set to default, therefore only the default assets will be deployed. In this demo or in this tutorial, we'll be mainly using the default demo, but of course if you want to use other demos, you're free to do so. All you have to do is just change it to demo 1 or demo 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. The debug field here, it's mainly to display more comments or more information as you compile Keen. So if you set it to true, it just generates basically more information within the command line after you run gulp, basically. And then compile and all this here is mainly for our our right to left compilation, which is our RTL compilation. So what this means is if you enable RTL, it's going to compile RTL assets into the assets folder after you run go. And all this here is to specify which plugin or which third-party asset that doesn't need to be included within the RTL compiler. The reason why we have this here is because all these third-party assets or vendor assets doesn't really need to be included in RTL, because like if you look at this, we have font awesome icons, and there is no right to left configuration for fonts basically. So all this is all unnecessary to be included in the RTL package. When we compile RTL, it doesn't get included in the main CSS or the main JS. What this does is it compiles a RTL file or folder that is separate from the main, which you can then use if you want to use right to left layouts. And all this is mainly for if you want to uglify or minify your JS or minify your CSS, or basically enable JS source maps or CSS source maps. If you do not need to, you can just leave it as false. If you need the compiler or the build tool to basically to minify your CSS, all you have to do is just change to true, and once you run go, it will be minified. Moving on to the path, this is where we declare where all our source or basically our folders are, our necessary folders are. Source is where our frameworks are sitting. Usually, if you look here, this is our source. So it's just to specify that where all our framework is sitting, where all our demo Sass and scripts and so on and so forth are located. The node modules is where it's just to specify where all our node modules is sitting. Core framework. This core framework and our demo API URL. Now this two is primarily here for us to use when we deploy our preview demos or our demo previews. This is mainly for us as a team developer to help us create our demos and basically our previews, which if you look here, it's all all these things here. You don't need these two fields, so you can feel free to remove it if you don't need it anymore. And this is, as mentioned in our previous videos, this is where the assets will be compiled to. Now, a quick explanation, further explanation about this too. This is like what we mentioned is where the source frameworks, source folders and files of Keen is located, but you are definitely allowed to change this path to something of your own. For example, if you plan to use our source or SRC file in your own project, like for example, you want to copy this entire framework folder into your project, and you want to use that instead of our default source location, you can just copy this framework folder into, or this whole source folder into your project, which is, let's say, your Keen app, somewhere maybe within assets or maybe in SRC here or something. And all you need to do is just change this path to where it's supposed to be, and it will work. Same goes with node modules. If you have your own node modules, like your own package file or package.json file or yarn configuration where you have your own set of dependencies. You can also just change this path to your project's node modules. Next will be our build. Now, for our builds, we have three main fields. Okay, we have our vendors where we place all our mandatory third-party plugins, and also optional third-party plugins. So, if in vendors you have our base and custom. I'll get to the custom shortly, but let's look at base first. In base, we have our source and bundle. Our source is where we put all our third-party vendors, and such as jQuery, Popper, Bootstrap, and so on and so forth. All these mandatory third-party plugins are always required if you're going to use Keen's layouts. It is required for Keen to work, basically. If you remove something, if you remove, like, for example, a tooltip, it might break Keen. However, if your project doesn't require any tooltips or it doesn't require any of those tooltip pop-ups, then again you are free to remove it from this list, and therefore when you run gulp, it will not be compiled. But we do not recommend that you remove anything from the mandatory. And then moving on to our optional. Now these are all optional third-party plugins where, again, if you are not required to use any one of these plugins within your project, you are free to remove it. For example, let's say you do not need a Bootstrap date range picker because you say you already have a dates picker, but let's say you don't need a date range picker, then you can just delete it like that. And when you run gulp, it will not be included within the assets. So that's the difference between mandatory and optional. The difference, what this does is, what this whole entire section here does is, it lists down all the plugins that will be included into a single bundle file. What do you mean by bundle file? So if you see here, look at we have styles and scripts. So every single style, like let's look at our mandatory. Every single style, like this one here, will be bundled up into a single file, like let's say this one, our perfect scroll bar .css, and our setter or Bootstrap date picker CSS. All these third-party vendor files, style vendor files, will all be compiled into a single file that is called vendors.bundle.css, which is located in vendors base and here. So if we have a look at our assets folder, which is where all these are compiled into, I've already compiled it into our Keen app in our previous video, so we're using the same demo as our previous video. So if you look at our assets and our vendors and then base and bundle.css, which is this one. So all this like styles here, for example, like our flat icon, our flat icon 2, our font awesome, all this vendor plugins, or third-party plugins, will be bundled up into a single file, and therefore we do not need to basically load so many separate files, which highly optimizes your project. So everything will be located here. We can actually do a quick search. Let's maybe look for, say, Morris, right? So if you do a quick find for Morris, it's all the here that basically this is all the Morris styles that's being bundled into a single CSS file. So that's what bundle means, along with the optional and base vendor source. You can what you can do here, you can also, like I mentioned, you can remove, and the other thing about this is you can actually add your own third-party plugin into this configuration, into this build tool. And what you do here is you just have to follow the same format where you have the name of your plugin. If your plugin has stylings, you just have to define where the CSS is located, and of course you will have the JS files, and all you have to do is just to specify where the JS files are located. And what this does is when you run gulp, it will then compile your newly added plugin into your vendor .bundle.css or vendors.bundle.js. So as mentioned, for scripts, all it does is it bundles up every single JS file within this section into a single file. Images and fonts, they are, as mentioned, they don't really bundle into a single file, but what it does is it just organizes all your images into a single file. For example, images, everything just basically compiled into this, and fonts are just all compiled neatly into its own font and images folder. So that's what this means. It doesn't bundle it up, it just organizes it. So in vendors, we have base. I mentioned we have base and custom, right? In base is where we have our base vendors, and base vendors are basically third-party plugins that are used quite often, or it's used quite often within Keen. So, and the file size, or not say the file size, the usage of it is often enough for us to justify to include this plugin. Even though that this plugin is optional, it is used enough times for us to include into our bundle. Not to mention that the file size is not large enough that it may slow down the load time of loading the CSS, because if we have a lot of CSS files or a lot of bundle or a lot of third-party vendors or third-party plugins, and if we bundle all those plugins together, we may be bloating the bundle file extensively, and we don't want to do that because that slows or basically reduces the optimization of your project. So plugins or third-party plugins that do not need or is not really used within the entire project, what we do is we add it into a custom field where we will specify one by one and bundle each one into its own individual bundle file. So for example, jQuery UI, it's used sometimes, it's not used all the time. So what it does is it bundles all this up into a folder called jQuery UI.bundle.css. And if you look here into our vendors, our assets, vendors, custom, We see jQuery UI, and it's all here. Same goes with our images and our full calendar, jQuery float, Gmaps. And here is a good example of what we mean by not including into the main bundle, which is our base bundle, is if you have a look at our data tables, we have a whole lot of CSS and a whole lot of JS, and data tables is only used when the page has a data table. So in our entire project, we may not need data tables in all our pages, right? So what we do is we bundle it up into its own bundle file, and then in that page where we require a data table, we just then include the bundled CSS and the bundled JS for that data table. And say on other pages like your home page, your dashboard, or your pricing pages or your graphs, you do not need the data table, and you just don't need to include this, which then optimizes your project a lot better. So our next next major field other than our vendors is our demos. Now, in our demos, we have a field or a config or configuration setting for each of our demo. Now, what this means is each demo, as you can see here, let's just have a look at our demos. Let's preview this and maybe this. So when you look at our demo, say this is a default demo, we have a side menu and different colors or maybe different paddings or different configurations in terms of style or even maybe layout JS, compared to say our demo 3 where we don't have an aside menu and we have a drop down header menu. So what this does is it just includes the styles, the scripts of that specific demo and bundles it up into its own CSS or JS file, which is separate from our vendors. Again, is because we do not want to bloat a bundle too much. So if you can see, let's have a look at this is our default and this is our demo 3. So if you can see, the difference is our defaults, we include our utils app, our foundation, and so on and so forth. This too, our framework is basically one of our mandatory JS scripts where it's absolutely needed within the project or within Keen to make Keen work. And this is something that we need to mention that you guys need to remember as well. The JS files are organized sequentially. So like the utils.js, the util.js has to come above the app.js simply because the app.js requires some dependencies from util.js. So if you look here, we have also an aside dash secondary.js because our default demo has a sidebar, which is a side menu. So if we look at demo 3, we do not have the aside menu because in demo 3, as you can see here, it doesn't have a sidebar or a side menu, and therefore not necessary. Skins is basically how we skin our theme, and this is also a very good reference for you to find where our Sass files for our layouts is located. So let's have a look at where this Sass is located. So it's located in our source theme demo. So let's have a look at our source here, theme, demo, default, Sass, header, skins, and it's one of it here. So let's just have a look at our base brand. So here we have our header styling, our menu styling, and our top bar, our side, and so on and so forth. We'll get to this slightly later when we discuss on our Sass customization. So similarly with our vendors above, like here where you can, in this where you can add your own styles, you can also add your own custom styles if you wish to override the header if you need to. So how you can do that is, let's say you want to override the header style. So let's look at maybe our brand and we want to override maybe this one here, our KT here. Just copy that and just, we don't really want to put within the same thing, the same folder, because it's called base. To keep it organized, maybe what we can do is we can create a new folder, call it custom, or how about this, my custom, and then we create a new file in there called, let's call this my header Sass. And what we can do here is we can then customize. Maybe the background color we want it to be something else, and maybe instead of using this color we could use something else, like maybe white or black, or even a variable. It's up to you. So what you do is you save that, and that's how you add a single file into the demo layout. That basically means that only the default demo, or if you put it in demo 3, only that demo will have that custom styling. If in your project, if you want a global based styling, we do not recommend you to put it into the demo like so. You can put it into either our app or into the vendors bundle. All you can do is like as we mentioned before, you can either add it to the base or add it as a custom, and then include the file individually to a specific page or wherever you want. So this is how the demo fields work. It's just compiling the styles and the JS files to fit the demo. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is our app. Our app is mainly for a global usage of custom pages that is created by us. Custom pages will be like our pricing, or our not this custom, like our blog, or pricing, our invoices, FAQs, user page, and stuff like that. So let's look at invoice 1, for example. So this this background here, or even the padding, the styles, the fonts, the colors, these are all parked under custom. And how do you read this is, we have this thing called styles by demo. Basically means is we are compiling styles or scripts for custom pages like invoice into we are basically compiling the styles into a CSS bundle, or basically bundling them into its own CSS file for each app item. And an app item will be one of this. This is all one of the custom app items, we are basically styling for each one of them for each demo. So for example, like we have invoice 1 here in the default demo. So if you go to invoice 1 here in our demo 3, you can see that it is about the same, but maybe slightly different. For example, maybe the padding or the size or even the colors is a bit different. Perhaps maybe this demo 3 may be a bad example. Let's maybe look at like this, for example, our demo 5. Let's go to custom. Let's load it. Custom invoice 1. As you can see, the colors are clearly different. So what this does, this styles by demo means is it just compiles every app into every app by itself, and then deploy each app, each custom app file into each demo's configuration. All right. So how can I explain this a little bit better? So let's have a look at our default. Let's look at our demo and our app custom. Let's say invoice 1. There, if you can see here, in our assets, app, custom, invoice, our invoice 1 has 6 CSS files. And this is because our CSS for demo 1 is different compared to our CSS for demo 5. And that is basically how this works. Similar with scripts, because the custom app files or custom app pages that comes within Keen is custom made by us, and it has to be custom made, and also it has to be fully optimized for each demo, and therefore this is how we control the app. So moving forward, this is how you can read our config file. And yes, and similar with our configuration above, like the demos and the vendors, you can see where all the styles are compiled into and how it's bundled up. Okay, so our next step to talk about is our Sass customization. So to find where all our Sass customization are located, it's all within our framework. So let's just minimize all this again, so we can start from the beginning one more time. So you go to our theme folder, and you go to our source, and so that source, theme, and framework, and config.sass. And in here you will see all the Sass variables where you can just change to anything that you want. So like if you want to change colors, you can just change it here. Like this is our brand color, you can just change it to any color you want, and then it will be changed like globally. However, if you notice that we have demos as well, so in demos overwrite the global. So what that means is in our source and in our demo, we have Sass and scripts, and in our Sass, we have another config. So we have this is our global config, and we have another demo config, which has perhaps its own set of colors or its own set of configurations, Sass configurations that overrides the global configurations to fit the theme or to fit the demo style. Like you see, this demo style looks different from this demo style and looks different from this demo style, but they're all the same pages. So previously when I mentioned when you want to create a custom CSS style or Sass style, it's best that you add your own custom folder here. Like so. You don't have to create a file yet. Let's create a new folder called, say, my custom. And in here, we create a new file called, say, my project typography, for example. Let's save that to underscore typo, my typography. Sass. And then in here, you can just define your elements. You could overwrite one of ours, or if you have your own custom elements, you can just put my custom element, and then you could put like text align, say center, or font size. Maybe instead of our default, you want it to be a bit bigger, maybe like 22 pixels, or REM. Oh, that's way too big. Maybe 2 REM, something like that. If you want to use our own colors, we can have a look at our config. We could use our KT stick colors or our K brand color, which you can just do like in say color, which is our own color. You can use our brand color. Okay, maybe let's not do it here. Now let's try putting this as active, and then put color K brand color and save. So all you have to do here is to then include this file into the include Sass. Go down, you need to include your the custom Sass file that you just created. And what you do is you can just run gulp. Let's look at tools, go to our CMD, run gulp. And that's it. Your file is now included. So instead of including like an external file within the config, the build config, you can also you can just include it into the main primary CSS. Of course, there are reasons to do one or the other. One of the reasons to do like just include it into the main is if your custom files are not large, or it's being used globally, or it's being used very often enough that we can consider putting it in the global style. If your item, if your style sheet is not being used as often, for example, out of maybe your 100 pages, you only use this style or this element maybe once or twice, and this element will have a custom style or custom JS. Then what you do is you go to your custom and then include it here. And then once you go to your HTML. For example, let's go to our HTML, which is our index, and then we just include the single CSS, or this JS right here. So include the single CSS as and when. In this example, we're using PHP, which is also good. It's because we can then add sort of like conditions on when to load the CSS or the JS files, or when to include the CSS or JS files, instead of including it right here at our pages, because this is the index that calls the contents, and the content changes dynamically within itself. So essentially, that is how you create and customize Sass files, and it is very similar with JS files as well. JS files are located in the, let me see, it's located in our lib folder. So in our lib or library folder, we have our utils and app. This is our two main JS files that Keen uses. So like in our utilities, we have our polyfill or our global variables for certain things, and our resizes, and so on and so forth, whichever you want to use. And check basically viewport detection. This is global scale JS. And then in our app.js, again, we have, this is our another very important function, where this initializes our entire theme, basically. Okay, so now that we've learned how to, read the default.json build config file. So you can now go ahead and experiment on it a bit further. We've also learned how to customize Sass, and also how to include a new custom Sass files, or new custom files. And also we've learned how to look and basically modify JS files. So have a crack at it. By doing so, that by using our build tools, you're free, and you're fully capable to customize how you plan to deploy your dependencies of the project. It doesn't have to be according to what we've set here. You can clearly just add or remove certain dependencies or certain assets that you need and you do not need to further optimize your project. Okay, so this will be the end of this video. We will be creating more how-to videos in the coming future. Like recently, we've released a how to upgrade to our latest version 1.3.9. Reason being is, in our 1.3.9 version, we've updated our prefix for all our CSS classes, and also our JS function names, and some of our data attributes as well. So if you have trouble updating to version 1.3.8, we highly suggest that you watch the video. I will add the link in the description below. And yeah, look forward for more how-to videos. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, so that every time we release a new video, you'll get an update. Also in the description, we will link our Twitter and Facebook and all the social links. So yep, please have a look and have fun with Keen. Take care.